Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Washington Informer News, WIN TV. I'm your host, Denise Rollard Barnes, and we are always here looking forward to giving to you news that you can use, news that's about you, and news that it makes what we publish every week important for our community. Today's show, we're excited, is brought to you by AARP, and we're going to be talking a lot about voting. But before we get started, I just have to remind you that another edition of Washington Informer News has hit the streets, and I want to make sure that you pick up a copy of the Washington Informer at your favorite newsstand. And if you cannot find it there, remember that you can go to our website at www.washingtoninformer.com. And while you're there, you can see what's new on our website as well as reading a copy of this week's issue of the Informer. And while you're there, I'd love for you to just take a moment and sign up to get the Washington Informer. We can deliver it to your email box every week. We have lots of exciting stories that we publish every day on our website, and we want to do our best to keep you informed. So that's one way that you can get the paper often, every week. And I should say, as I've said before, that it's very important, it's very helpful to us that you do that you subscribe online. And thanks to the support of organizations like AARP, we can continue to deliver the news you can use. I just realized that my pencil sharpener is kind of like hanging out the side of my hair, and I like for my pencil sharpener to show. So how do I do that? Okay, because we can't forget our roots, and it all started with a pencil and a piece of paper. We're doing all this internet stuff, but right now it's the pencil and a piece of paper that I always have to be mindful of is with our beginning. So, this week, I'm just going to say a couple things because that's all I can say. All I can say is taxes. All I can say is debate. All I can say is COVID-19 and the White House. Do I need to say more? Hasn't this been a week beyond weeks? It's been full of news, and it's had our heads going back and back and forth, just trying to figure out what is going on. So having said that, the most important thing for you to remember is to continue to wear your mask, continue to social distance, and continue to stay safe. That's all I can say. If you don't get that message, I don't know who can give it to you, because we've got the proof in the pudding today. Throughout the month of October, we will be focusing on the election, which takes place on November 3rd. And many of you, like me, are receiving your ballot in the mail. I got mine the other day, and I want to remind you, fill it out now. As a matter of fact, if you're just sitting there watching the show and you have your ballot, go ahead and fill it out. We're going to talk a lot about voting. Again, like I said, thanks to the presence of AARP and their support for this program, and some of the other great guests that we have on in a little while. But I want to say, did I say loud enough? Like James Brown used to say it loud. Well, besides being black and proud, which I am, I'm saying say it loud, vote. Did I say it loud enough? Vote. Can I say it louder? Vote. And do it now. Don't wait. Just go ahead and do it now. So on that note, I'm happy to have joining us Lewis Davis, who is the State Director for AARP. Lewis leads a team of 5 staff and volunteers in establishing AARP as the champion of over 83,000 AARP members and others age 50 plus, and their families in the District of Columbia. I guess I fit in that category, right, Lewis? He has served in this role for over 11 years, and he has a proven track record for taking seriously and advocating for the interest of those who are 50 plus. Lewis, thank you so very much for joining us today. I'm so glad to have you.
And Denise and the Washington Informer, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I should pull out my AARP membership card for the full disclosure part, but everybody knows I'm a member, used to be state president, and know fully well, having had the chance to work with you again, how important this moment in history is to you. You take it personally, and you want to make sure that we are all going to be engaged. So I want to ask you, first of all, as we head towards November, and especially as it relates to district residents, who are we voting for? And what are we voting for?
Thank you for asking. It does help in that people why they're going to the ballot, why they're going to polls with a ballot or voting by mail. The obvious one is the big ticket, right? President and vice president. We're voting for a delegate to the United States House of Representatives. That's the seat being held right now by Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton. We're voting for two at-large members of the council. At-large member Robert White is up for re-election, and there's an open seat left vacant or being vacated by David Grosso. So two at-large seats. U.S. United States Senator Shadow is up for re-election, and U.S. Representative Shadow open for re-election. Also, State Board of Education seats in wards 2, 4, 7, and 8, and ANCs as well. So it's a lot on the ballot here in DC.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to share this on Facebook and I have no idea what I'm doing. But for those of you all who are watching, help me out. Go ahead and share this program with your friends and family on Facebook because we want everybody to hear what AARP and Louis Davis is sharing with us about what we're voting for and why. So tell me, why do you feel it's important to bring this kind of a conversation about voting to our listeners today?
For AARP, as you mentioned, our members who tend to be 50 and older, but they also represent households that we work on behalf of as well. We want to make sure that candidates respond to the issues that AARP hears from its members are most important to them. And so we have 5 questions we would like for persons going to the polling place or voting by mail to ask of the candidates that they're about to vote for. And if I can real quickly, they are, what are your budget and tax priorities and how will they help improve the lives of people 50 plus? Do you think the district has done enough to promote affordable housing? What are your views on a mandated consumer advocate on the utility commissions? What are your views on the elder abuse response team? That's a bill moving through the DC Council that would help protect seniors from all forms of abuse and fraud. And lastly, what will you do to ensure that DC residents are protected against fraud and deceptive, unfair business practices? And you can find these questions on our AARP.org/DC website. But those are at least 5 questions we would like for voters 50 plus or their family members caring for someone who's 50 plus to have in the back of their front of their minds, actually, when they pull that lever. Tell them my age, right? You don't pull a lever anymore. You tend to circle. Color in a circle or punch out a Chad. But those things are at stake this election.
So you all have produced some important messages. We're going to take, just sort of jump away for a second to watch one of them, and then we'll come back with more questions. Hold on. I think that reiterates especially what we just talked about. So I'm glad that we were able to share that with our viewers. And I want to ask folks, you can join in the conversation if you have any questions. We won't get to all of them, of course, but you can put them in the chat box of our video because we might have some others than the ones that I'm going to ask Louis about. But we want to thank AARP for that message. And so starting, just from the beginning, because some people aren't even registered to vote yet, Louis. So what would you advise those who really, especially after this week, want to jump in and be a part of expressing their voice by voting? How can they do that?
Absolutely. And for your audience, the information I'm about to share is pertaining to District of Columbia. So if you're in Maryland or Virginia, you need to visit the Board of Elections websites in your respective jurisdictions, because this is done 50 different ways, plus DC, Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands. So for first-time voters in the District of Columbia, if you have never voted before in an election, but you've been living here for at least 30 days prior to the election, which is required, you can register to vote right now. Don't wait any longer, because you have until October 13th to do so. You should visit www.dcboe.org. That's the website for the Board of Elections. DC is unique too. Not too many states allowed. We do. You can register on election day, November 3rd. I say, why wait? But if you're going to procrastinate, you can. But on that day, if you do that, you've got to show up with government issued photo ID. And you probably want to take along with you, it'd be great if you had a passport, utility bill to help connect who you are to your address in the District of Columbia. If you wait to register until election day, strongly suggest you don't do that. It's going to be a busy day, election day. Why do you want to have to do that? And you can register right now. You have until the 13th to do so.
And what about absentee voting? What about the ballots? I mean, how do you contact the Board of Elections to get a ballot? I know, like I said, some of us are getting them in the mail now. They're not absentee ballots, but how do we do that?
Yeah, and so let's connect those two and demystify this for folks. Absentee ballot is also known as a mail-in ballot. So they can be used synonymously here in DC. And you're right, in DC, again, like a few other states, you didn't have to do anything. If you were a registered voter and voted in the primary, you got a ballot mailed to your home. And I got mine on Wednesday. So those began going out this week. Don't know that everyone got theirs on Wednesday, but they began mailing those out this week. So you don't have to do anything. When that comes to your home, you get a postage paid return envelope. It can't be any easier. So like Denise said at the opening of the show, why wait? You can fill it out today. And then we have great options. The DC Board of Elections and the mayor have arranged to put mail-in ballot drop boxes all around the District of Columbia. There are over 50 of them, and that's a conservative number. These are akin to a mailbox, but they're not. These are ballot drop boxes, and they're all over the city. To locate the one nearest you, again, go to the Board of Elections website, and that's www.dcboe.org. And you can drop your ballot, your completed ballot. Don't drop an incomplete ballot anywhere, but your completed ballot in any drop box anywhere in the city. So you can live in Ward 3 and be shopping or doing business in Ward 7 and drop it in a drop box in Ward 7, or vice versa. So, but you need to do that before 8 p.m. election day. So you have from now until 8 p.m. election day to drop that mail-in ballot in any drop box anywhere in the city. But make sure it's a completed ballot. And to get those locations, you can go to the Board of Elections website at www.dcboe.org.
Louis, you raised something that we talked about in a previous show, and I think that's a good point for people to understand that if you're in the District of Columbia, you can use any of the ballot drop boxes to send in your ballot. However, if you happen to be a resident of the District of Columbia and you see a drop box in Prince George's County, don't put it in that one, right?
No. Our borders are porous. But while I could go to my barber in Prince George's County, that's not the same thing. That's Maryland. That's a different state. They would be busy handling and only handling their own ballots from Maryland residents. So I don't care how often you visit grandma in Prince George's County or your barber, do not drop your ballot in a box in Maryland thinking it will wind up back here in DC. That will not be the case. That ballot will be lost. So you don't want to do that. There's no excuse to do that. Again, they've made the way for you to drop that ballot in any drop box and early voting site too, which we'll talk about in a second, I think, anywhere in the city. Okay, so can't be more convenient than that.
And the other thing I noticed, there are a couple things. I'm talking about it myself, and I'm glad you're here to even clear things up with me. Two things. One, the envelope has a security envelope, and then that security envelope goes into another envelope. So I got that part straight. I realized before that I had to sign
Yes.
and date the envelope.
Yes.
And then there were these two circles, two holes. And I was trying to figure out, am I supposed to match these holes up with something? Which there was nothing to match them up with. But do you know anything about that? The holes in the envelope?
Oh man, you got me. I haven't even called it yet, but I did see on the Board of Elections website as I was perusing yesterday, as I try to stay fresh. There is a disclaimer to ignore the holes, but I don't want to speak out of turn. And if my staff is listening, please look this up and get the information to us before we end the show. But there was a disclaimer. There's something on the ballot I read about on the website that says to ignore. But more importantly, I do want to stress what you just mentioned. You have to sign. Do not print. Don't put it in your typewriter if you still have an IBM Selectric typewriter, some sitting around someplace, and type your name. You have to sign your name, cursive, we call it, right? And date it, because they're trying to match your signature that you have on file, that they have on file for when you voted last or when you first registered to vote. So my signature, it looks a variety of different ways, but it usually looks about the same. And that's how they match your signature to Lewis Davis, who voted in the primary and voted in the last election with my address by the same name. So do not print, do not type your name, sign your name using cursive and write it like you normally would and put the date. We'll look into those circles, but there was a disclaimer about that on the DC BOE website.
Yeah, I figured that was their personal code, so to make sure that the ballots are right. So I'm glad, and hopefully we'll get some answers to that. We know you're bringing on a guest, and because of time, we want to get her on. But before we do that, just quickly, we talked a little bit about the polling places and the polling hours. I don't know if there's any more that you wanted to share with us about that that we need to know.
Well, yeah, it sounds like you just gave me 2 minute warning, so I don't want to leave out the important information. So there's early in-person voting, right? Virginia started over a week ago. So I've been telling my team and anyone I talk to, November 3rd is not the first day to vote. It is the last day to vote. Let me say that again. November 3rd, this is not 50 years ago, right? We do this differently now. It's the last day to vote. Early voting starts here in DC October 27th, and it ends November 2nd. So this is if you want to go in person, right? You can drop your mail-in ballot in any of the drop boxes anytime after you've gotten it around the city. This is early voting in person. You want to go to your poll. You want to go to the DC BOE website to find out where the polling locations are. Do not assume that the polling place you've been voting at for the last, I don't know how many years or elections or even the primary is the same. They've opened up twice as many as the primary. There are over 80 polling places that will be open. But why I take that risk? You want to go online and see and find the one closest to you. There'll be 32 early in-person voting sites. And this is 32 early in voting. There'll be twice that number on election day. So if you want to beat the lines or take a couple of stabs at getting there to beat the line, you have until October 27th to take your ballot there. They are putting in place every variety and required by CDC guideline to keep everyone safe. There will be at least 6 feet of physical distancing as you wait in line and inside the polling place. Every machine is being sanitized between each voter. You're even getting your own ink pen to sign with if you have to sign there, and you usually do have to sign your signature there as you check in, and you keep that pen. So you don't have to worry about touching a pen that somebody 5 persons before you touched. You get a pen and you keep that pen. So they're doing everything they can to keep everyone safe for those who want to vote in person. Also brand new, super centers. These are super voting centers. And you probably heard about these in the news. They've been popping up around the country. And I mean, run them through real quick, and you can go online as well to find these. Capital One Arena, downtown in Ward 2, will be open on election day. These are only election day centers. Dock 5 at Union Market, Ward 5. Entertainment and Sports Arena in Ward 8. The Omni Shore Hotel in Ward 3. National Park in Ward 6. And University of District of Columbia in Ward 3. Last I was told by the director of BOE, they're still working on a super center in Ward 7. They haven't identified it yet. These will be, as you know, they're gigantic places. They're meant to accommodate long lines and they can move people through more quickly. They'll be doing the sanitizing as well. One unique difference, though, is that the super centers, there's no curbside voting. So if you have any type of physical impairment, you move a little bit slower, you walk with a walker or cane, or you're in a wheelchair, or you just want to drive up, there is no curbside voting like that in these super centers. For these,
And
you have to walk yourself into the super centers.
quick question about that too, Louis. If you are a ward, let's say a 6 resident or Ward 8 resident, can you vote at a super center in another ward?
Yes, just like the drop boxes, you can vote in person at any of these super centers.
Okay, wonderful. So we're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we look forward to meeting Miss Indi Williams, who has a story to tell herself about voting in the District of Columbia. We'll be right back. Thank you so much, and I love these messages, Louis. It's really, really, I think, on point for where we are right now, and it's an honor to bring on Miss Indi Williams. And Louis, I'd love for you to go ahead and give us an introduction of our guest.
I hope I do, Miss Indi, justice. Indi has been one of our key volunteers here in our DC state office. I want to say for over 5 years. She lives in Ward 5, and she's one of what we call our ward liaison. These are volunteers who, as the name suggests, live in a ward, and they're the eyes and ears for that ward, liaisoning between their community inside that ward back to me and my team. They help us to keep tabs on the council members. So in Ward 5, they have the council member McDuffie, and any of the matters and issues they're hearing on the ground in the neighborhood that they live in. That's the ward liaison, and that's what Indi is. And she does a great job, and we're happy to have her.
Wonderful. Great to meet you, Miss Williams. And I don't know if you're like me, but once upon a time, I had what I call a nightmare that an election came and I forgot to vote. I mean, that scared the heck out of me because I voted in every election, but I don't know if I have the record that you have. Can you talk about your voting history?
Well, when I started college, it wasn't an election year until 1968 when Nixon was elected and Kennedy and King were shot. So that was my first experience with voting then.
Okay, and so you've been involved with AARP, but what has that done to inform you with regards to issues, and what is it that you look for, particularly as a seasoned voter, when you look at candidates and when you go to the polls?
Well, now that I'm a queen-ager, I have found that with AARP, there are a lot of things that we don't know and discuss openly with our seniors. Fraud, voting. There are many things. Getting your wills done. There's so many things that we do for the populace, and we need to get that information out to them as we're getting the information out for voting this election year, which is very, very, very important.
Louis, feel free to jump in because you know Miss Williams a lot better than I do. It's a pleasure to meet her. But there are probably, you've got what, 80, what was it, how many seniors that AARP represents in the district? 83,000?
Yeah, although they don't all like to be called seniors. Remember, you can be a member at 50 and older. So we have 83,000 members.
And so Miss Williams, of course, represents one of those 83,000 members. But what is it that makes AARP so valuable to folks who want to stay active and and up on issues?
I think it's this space we've maintained for 62 years in being the biggest, most reliable, objective, fact-based voice advocating and fighting for the issues that impact people 50 plus and their families for 62 years. Started in healthcare, and it now covers everything from transportation, built environments, housing, age discrimination in the workplace and other places. You name it, AARP has been there in the corner of people 50 plus and their families for 6 decades. And we're reliable, we're objective. We're very political, but we're nonpartisan. So as long as you're doing right by people 50 plus, you get a thumb up from us. Not doing right by people 50 plus, you're going to hear from us. And it may not be all that nice.
Ms. Williams, Lewis talked about pulling the what did you call it? The lever to vote, but and he said he was showing his age. But what changes have you seen in voting over the years?
Well, now that they've gone computer-wise, we don't pull the lever at NGM to gamble or to vote anymore. So now it's a touch system, or you can write in with your pen or pencil. And even if you can't come into the precinct, you can, someone will come out and help you fill out your ballot and then bring it inside for you. It's been a lot better, in the last 15 years, and a lot easier for people to come in and vote. So, everybody should avail themselves of all the advantages and all the things that we are voting for now and today and on October 3rd.
Sure, November. It's good to get there early. No, you're right. I think that's a good thing. We can't get there early enough. But the last question I want to ask you, though, is one of the big issues right now, of course, is this virus, this coronavirus. And a lot of people are nervous about, going to the polls, working at the polls. I'm sure you reflected on that. What are your thoughts?
Well, there are so many conspiracy theories on how to get it and how not to get it. Basically, wearing your gloves, wearing your mask if you have to be out in public, and staying home, which is really pushing forth this second baby boom next year. I have 6 new babies coming next year, and I told my children, well, I'll throw money at you. I'm not coming to take care of anybody, but we all have to be aware of the dangers of this virus. And this whole thing about a vaccine will be out before Election Day is a bunch of hooey. But we all have to really be careful and be decisive and plan ahead for what we want to do, shopping or just taking a walk in the park or anything like that, just to keep to yourself and your family members and do what you can to help those who have already got it. I mean, I'm leaving the medical profession now, and it's just so sad to see the 200,000 people who have expired from this. And now that our fearless leader has contracted it, we will be watching very carefully.
Thank you. Interesting, Ms. Williams. And I didn't know, about your background in the medical profession. So I know you've seen firsthand what's been happening out there. So I'm just so glad you took a few minutes to talk to us and again, giving us the warning to stay safe and do what we need to do with wearing our masks. So I want to thank you for joining us. And Louis, we're going to jump off for a second, but we're going to see you in a few minutes. So don't go away, okay?
All right.
All right. Thank you so much.
Take care.
All right. You too.
Complete the 2020 U.S. Census. It is safe and secure. It benefits your city, your community, and your family. Complete it online, over the phone, or once you receive it in the mail. You matter. Get counted. 2020 Census.gov.
The census isn't over. We only, but it's almost. I think we've got a couple more days to get those census forms filled out. So I always want to keep you mindful of that. And then again, I want to thank AARP for sponsoring this edition of Win TV, and not only sponsoring this edition of Win TV, but also sponsoring our recent voter's guide. It's really a informational historical piece that's in this week's edition of the Washington Informer. But like I said, you can get it online. And this was made possible by our special editions editor, Dr. Chantella Sherman. Dr. Sherman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me as always.
So tell me, what can people look for in this issue?
Oh, we pulled the rabbit out of the hat with this one. So I'm extremely grateful that James Wright did an exceptional piece on home rule because a lot of people who've moved to the district don't understand the history of DC and voting rights. And so all of that's broken down pretty meticulously, including some information from Dr. Calvin Rolock, your dad, and the founder of the Washington Informer, who was a staunch advocate of both home rule and statehood for DC. In addition to that, there are checklists that are there so that you can go through and ensure that you have everything that you need in order to vote. And then there are a couple of historical narratives that I personally place in to just try and encourage people to go out and vote because I was rather alarmed that only 126 million registered voters came out to vote in the 2016 election. And that's roughly 55% of those who were eligible to vote. And so we have to understand just how important voting is. And so we kind of go through that in jury duty, speaking about what is indicative and necessary as a citizen of this country, that you do your duty. And part of that is jury duty and voting.
When you, besides the numbers, when you did this, did you discover anything else new? I mean, I know that we go down these paths and we're like, wow, even though we think we know where we're headed. Was there anything that surprised you as you put this issue together?
I think what probably pulled on me the most was the fact that college campuses and schools are usually the places where voting takes place most, and whether it's the canvassing process or the actual pulling the lever. And so with COVID this year, what we're starting to find out is that a lot of things that we took for granted, we can't take for granted this year. And so it was indicative. I'm glad it was an imperative that we pulled together some type of guide to help people know you have to go back and check your status. You have to determine if you're not necessarily your district, but the place where you would vote, your polling centers are still open or if they've moved. And then what procedures and protocol are in place for those who are concerned about COVID. And so how will this, how will we do it this year? They may be slightly different. So it was interesting to see the different areas and different regions are doing different things, and then how that will actually impact the voting numbers as we get into the election.
One of the things that you do in every special issue, which I think all of us appreciate, is sort of a reading list of books. You did that again this time. And what can you tell us or share with us what some of those books were?
Well, again, I thought it was important to have some type of historical texts that were there so that you understand what the importance of history is, the importance in history of voting. So we always assume that everyone who comes to this country can vote, but this was a tiered process. And so we say, okay, all white men were able to vote coming in. That's not true. So you need to be able to understand. And so there are a couple of historical texts there, but also Michael Fauntroy's book. He's a Howard University political scientist. And I wanted to, again, ensure that those who wanted additional information specifically about home rule in DC, as we're still trying to fight for statehood, understood just what that process has been since the inception of this area.
Interesting. I was talking to Miss Williams earlier about the nightmare that I had waking up. And it wasn't even an election, but I woke up thinking, oh my goodness, I didn't vote. Because I did vote in the first election after home rule in the district. And it was the first election since this one that I would have submitted an absentee ballot because I was a student at Hampton at the time. And I had to, not only because of the history of voting as it relates to Black folks in this country, but because, as you said, my family was so actively involved in the home rule struggle that I couldn't sit back and say it's not important.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate what you've done again. You've done again and again, but you've done it. You did it again this time. And to be honest, you all always create the covers. I don't, but I like the fact that you had a young Black male, on the cover with the what do you call it? The mask.
His
Yeah,
mask, yeah.
yeah, with his mask. And so that says a whole lot, because we try to say things. But why did you decide to use that as a cover?
Well, actually, I would love to take the credit for it, but that was Zebra Design. That was Dan and Jaren, our great graphic designers who came up with that. But again, the stay safe and vote. So I think Ron Burke, who handles the advertising, just really, really stressed that no matter what, it was important that we get out and vote. And so if COVID was the issue, then we needed to make sure we handled that with the cover. Cover up your face, but go vote.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I know that next week we're going to be looking at financial literacy, another issue that impacts our community because, we've got to vote, but also we've got to make sure that we know how to manage our pocketbooks and to continue to bring resources into our communities, particularly during this time of COVID. So looking forward to see what you have in store for us.
Absolutely. Look forward to being back here again this time next week.
All righty. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Sherman. All right. So up next, we're going to talk to Kathy Sheeran. I have to say, I don't want to say an old friend, but a good friend from way back. And our sons were really good friends. But I am so excited that she is now the president of the League of Women Voters and also a sponsor of our election guide that came out this week. So I want to welcome Kathy to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Denise. It's great to see you. And thanks to the Washington Informer.
Yeah, I love that sign behind you, Statehood for DC. Hey, the struggle continues.
You better believe it.
So tell me a little bit about, for those who don't know, some background on the League of Women Voters.
Well, we're 100 years old. We grew out of the suffrage movement and continue through these 100 years to empower voters and defend democracy. So our goal is to make sure that everybody who can vote does vote and does so with the confidence of knowing how to vote, who to vote for, and has the ability to get to the polls and cast their ballot.
And you're not only local, but you're also a national organization, isn't that correct?
Yes, we're in 50 states and the District of Columbia. And interestingly enough, there's one overseas unit in Hong Kong.
Take credit for it.
Not all my doing, but I was there.
Yeah. Well, no, that's exciting because we just don't know how far and wide. I mean, we know it when things happen in this country and we hear what other folks around the world are thinking about our own elections, which we always talk about other folks as well. But to know that there are people on the ground in other places actually trying to keep our folks registered.
Right, because there are Americans living everywhere in the world, and the ability for our military, our foreign service folks, and other business people who are working overseas to be able to cast their ballots in all the U.S. elections is important.
So you all are about to, I think, host a virtual event coming up soon. So talk about that.
Yeah, Tuesday evening, the League of Women Voters US is hosting a Facebook Live program on examining racism, and there'll be opportunity for everybody to participate as well. And this is something we realize the history of the suffrage movement has had its some cringeworthy moments, as we know. And I know the Washington Informer has been great about highlighting some of our unsung heroes and heroines through the movement and through all the current events, it's forced us all to take a good look at our history and learn from our errors and our mistakes, and learn where we can do better and strive to do better. So I think Tuesday's program will be a good event for everyone.
Are there any individuals who are going to be participating that we need to know
It'll
about?
be our national president, Dr. Deborah Turner. She's a medical doctor who grew up in Iowa, I believe. And she's our recently elected national president, and our CEO, Virginia Case, will both be on the event. So unfortunately, I'll be listening in, but I'm also been asked to be on a panel that night with our YWCA. So like many of us, we juggle many, many events at the same time.
So lastly, I know that, whenever there's an opportunity for, whenever there's an election, the League of Women Voters are like, right there in
We're
the
there.
forefront. Yeah, you provide a lot of information, just like AARP, and information guides and voter guides and places where you can go and actually find out. Would you talk to us about what you have that's available?
Yeah, so vote411.org is just an absolutely fantastic resource for any U.S. address. Excuse me, you can go online, key in your address, and are able to see, you'll be able to click on a link to register, to update your registration, to find out your polling locations, when they're open. And we've updated everything. We'll continue to update everything with COVID information. And as things evolve, if new polling sites come up, if one's closed, whatever, it will be updated. But in my mind, the most useful resource is actually the voter guide. You can see everything that's on your ballot. And here in DC, in our local election, we have over 20 people running for an at-large council seat. And how do you sort out who to vote for? So the League works very hard on crafting questions that are not leading in any way, but address issues that our voters are concerned about. And we pose these to the candidates, and it's up to them to answer. And we can see those who have taken the time to answer and look at this and help us each decide who we want to vote for. And this information is all the way up from our ANC commissioners that are running for office, all the way up the ticket. So people say, vote the whole ballot. I'd like to say vote up the whole ballot. So let's start with our ANC folks and work our way up. But vote411.org is a fantastic resource. It's all the election information you need for anywhere in the United States.
Well, the one thing about COVID, it has certainly given us more access to information and ways to know about voting than in past years. So there's a positive side to this, if one exists. Let me just ask briefly before we go, how does one become a member of the League of Women Voters?
Oh, easy. Go on to our website, lwvdc.org, and click on that join button. And that's it. We have student memberships, and we have a regular membership as well as sustaining and centennial memberships. We're a 501c3, so all of the donations help us with our efforts to get out the vote, or as I've been saying, GITV, get into voting, because not only should we be into voting, but we can actually vote in our homes now. So GOTV, get out to vote, but also GITV, get into voting.
I love that. I love that. Kathy, Sharon, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to at least sharing this some more with our listeners and our viewers, and we will be talking to you soon. Thanks again.
That's great. Thank you, Denise. It's great to see you.
Okay, doc. All right. Thank you. Thank you. And as we move on, I mean, there's also not only the League of Women Voters, AARP, and others. I mean, everybody is galvanizing the vote. And I talked a little bit earlier about the choice of Dr. Sherman with the special issue in the Informer, utilizing the face of a young Black male to stress the importance of voting. And that's not an accident that we have that conversation, and that's why we're so happy to bring on with us Mr. Ray Savoy, who is with the organization Black Men Vote. And Mr. Savoy, of course, many of you all may know him because he is a staple at the Langston Golf Course. He teaches young people about golfing, but he's also a community activist in his own right. And Mr. Savoy, I'm so glad to have you with us to talk about Black Men Vote.
Thank you so much, Denise. It's a pleasure. And thanks for the opportunity to talk about Black Men Vote. This is an organization, group of men who came together in May for a sole purpose and a platform. And the sole purpose is to register 1 million Black men to vote this time around. We have various activities and events that will be kicking off in mid-October. And it's very important that we reach out to our Black brethren and let him know that his voice is so important. The thing of it is your voice, your choice, stand up and vote. The group of Black men that we gather on Wednesdays and Sundays come from all over the country, California, Florida, Mississippi, the DMV even. And the whole idea is we're going to gather and make sure that we register 1 million Black men to change the complexion and what is going on in our country now. It is very important. And I stress to the brothers that I talk to, the young men and elderly gentlemen, how important that they take time out in their busy schedules, or if they're not doing anything, to go register and get out and vote. At
Mr.
the same
Savoy, one
time,
of the, I hate to cut you off, but one of the things that I like in your statement is not only to register Black men, but to register Black men and vote. Because that's one of the problems Dr. Sherman talked about earlier, and so many. I mean, we may have these great registration drives, but how do we get people to the polls? And so what I'd just like to know what you're doing to reinforce that part of the message.
well, we're making sure that there is a follow-up to a degree of the people that we make contact with in the registration, and encouraging them to not to be on the sideline. A lot of times they hesitate and they're lost and regret, I wish I had her. And that's not good enough, especially this time around. Like I say, our mission is to register and get these Black men and young millennial out to vote this time around. We have a platform where we're seeking a seat at the table, you might say, where we can discuss the criminal justice. We can also talk about the health and wellness of our Black families and men. The quality of education is so important with our Black men. The other thing is that we must encourage them and to empower them with justice, that they be able to learn how to stand up. My personal appeal to them is get to educate yourself. Being able to recite the ABCs, just sign on the dotted line of important documents, knowing what you're reading is
Right.
so very
Mi-
important.
Mr. Savoy, it's interesting because we are going to revisit the fact, we're coming up on the 25th anniversary of the Million Man March. And
Yes.
one of the pledges, items in the pledge was to vote. And so I think you all are doing the right thing by following through on this. And I really hope that you're successful in making this happen, particularly for this election. But how can people reach out to you? How can they find out more information about Black Men Vote?
They can go to Black Men Vote, I think it's .org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and we're on Instagram, more or less. So there's soon and be ready to take part in some of the up and coming events we have planned mid-October. That's where we want to start the massive registration so that we be educated. We want our Black young men and gentlemen and elderly to be educated in what it is and what it means about voting, because it was a struggle to be able to go into that poll. And back during that time, as you were talking, I observed you say, pull the lever. I understand what you were saying. So it's a change of times, but it's still very important.
Right, right. Mr. Savoy, thank you so much. We put up on the screen the website for Black Men Vote and also where they can find you on Facebook. Really appreciate you coming on and talking with us today. And we will have continue this conversation after November 3rd. All right.
Thank you so much, Denise. It's been a pleasure. And thanks, Washington Informer.
Thank you so much. Okay. We're going to bring Lewis back because, we've had a couple of folks. We had the League of Women Voters, in addition, of course, to Ms. Williams, and then Mr. Savoy now, talking about Black Men Vote. Your reaction, Lewis?
The whole time Mr. Savoy was speaking, I was sitting here just beaming with pride. He would be my elder. And, like I guess Inday was saying earlier, I have voted ever since I could. And so that's since 1982. So if you're out there doing the math, trying to figure out how old I am, I was 18, living in Chicago. And I've never missed an election. It is so important. It is it is freest, although some are trying to take that freedom away from us, but it has not always been free, but it is the freest form of expression that can accompany civil protests in the streets, and civil protest is often needed and it's needed now. And that's why you see it happening around the country. But if you rightfully practice your right to protest in a civil way, and you do nothing else to help change the equation of the very parties, the very structures you're trying to change, by not voting, you're missing an opportunity to impact those structures. I hope to talk to Mr. Savoy because next Thursday, October 8th, for this very reasons he espoused, I've wanted to do a particular GOTV effort with African American men. So I'm partnering with the National African American Men's Wellness Agency, started out of Columbus, Ohio. They have a chapter here in DC. We've worked with them before. They usually do a 5K walk run east of the river. It was canceled this year because of the pandemic. And that's all about engaging Black men to take care of their health, to know their numbers. Well, we're working with them next Thursday. And we're aiming to get as many Black men, voting age 18 and up, onto our event next week. So I invite Mr. Savoy to watch us and engage with us on that event next week. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to segue again, Louis, and I don't want you to go because, we've gone from, our queenagers and kingagers to us, I think, who are still in that boomer category. Of course, I might have a year or two on you, but, who's talking years? But we're going to bring in a millennial, because I know that that's part of the conversation as well. And I'm so excited to have, we have an intern or a fellow actually that's working with us, Erica Johnson. And Erica is graduated from American University with her master's degree. And so she's working with us for about 10 weeks as a Google News Initiative fellow. And we've been talking about voting. And so I wanted to bring Erica into the conversation because I know AARP, even though you focus on people 50 plus, I got my membership at 47 some reason. I don't know how that happened, but Erica, you're muted. So can you unmute yourself?
Oh yeah, I was saying my mother has her membership too.
Wonderful. So I mean, we both want to talk to you because it's I think AARP's efforts and all of our efforts has been to try to make sure that younger people understand the value of voting. And so weigh in on that.
I guess for me, voting is important because I see all the changes and all the things that people have fought for previously that either haven't happened. Some things have changed, but most things, if you look at like the Black Panthers, what Huey P. Newton and those organizations, they founded, and they did this at a really young age, Martin Luther King, we're still fighting for the same progress that we have not gotten. In fact, in a lot of cases, we've regressed. And now during the pandemic, we've regressed even more. So, for example, the threat of having like $26 billion cut from Social Security. Now, there's been a threat of that before, but now I feel like it's more serious because of who's leading the White House now, that this is a huge possibility that our futures, we already knew that we wouldn't have as much money as people who have, before us had in Social Security, but that's a threat. Not only that, but then also student loan debt. It was a huge thing for millennials and Gen Z. A lot of people are living at home right now. So what's happening out here directly impacts us, especially when people are graduating from school. There are a lot of people who didn't have internships or jobs because of the pandemic. So like we have the flip side of people being older, elderly, and then you have the people who are married, have kids. But then these people that are coming out of school, that came out of school right now, just trying to start their lives, couldn't. So that is going to have a long-term effect in our long-term future for millennials. So everything that's happening right now is directly impacting my generation and younger. So it's very important to get out to vote.
Louis, that almost feeds right into your hand when you talk about Social Security and you're talking about, young people moving back into the houses of their parents and how that is impacting particularly your members. How are you all addressing that?
But it's staying in the frame of the conversation here. We perennially we fight to protect Social Security. About every high moon, there's some threat to Social Security, to expanding Medicaid in states that we fought for, to protecting the Affordable Care Act that AARP fought for back in 2009 and 2010. And while we still haven't finished that work because it's still in danger. It's been chipped away at every few years over the last 4.5 years. And I would, it's a pleasure to meet you, Erica. I would add to what Erica said in helping people to understand that no matter what generation you're born into, you're impacted by public policy. You're impacted by the political decisions that create policies that impact your local taxes, how your schools are funded, whether or not you have clean water in Flint, Michigan. So it doesn't matter if you're 18 years old or 88 years old. If you're drinking water laced with lead, you should be doing something about that, and you have the ability when you vote. So I was talking to my barber this week, and just across the line in Maryland, and he's all of about 27, 28 years old. And I was just curious, and I asked him how many, he happens to be African American, how many of his peers were planning to vote. And he, grudgingly, said, not enough of them. He intends to, but he gets kind of a shrug of the shoulders, and that ain't for me, and what difference will it make? Kind of response, and he pushes back, and I gave him some more ammunition to push back with. We stand on the shoulders of our grandmothers, mothers, grandfathers, great grandfathers who stood in line, being spat on, having bricks thrown at them, guns pointed in their faces. And we don't have the audacity to sit out any election and say, what's that got to do with me?
But Louis, I hate to interrupt, and because of time, we're going to wrap up in a minute. And I wanted Erica to weigh on this, because I've heard young people say, I've heard that, I get it, but what does that have to do with me? And I don't know, Erica, how you feel about that. I just want to give you sort of a last word to either defend, explain, or like Louis say, you don't have the audacity. What's your feel on this?
For me, I feel like I'm also a legal observer with the National Lawyers Guild, and I'm also on the co-chair of the Mass Defense Committee. So I'm like super activated within like what's happening in social justice. So you're preaching to the choir when you're speaking to me, but other people that I've spoken to, and it depends on the circles that you're in, because you have to meet people where they are so that they understand where you're trying to get them to go. So if you're saying that, okay, well, we don't see exactly, I think now people that are younger, Gen Z, millennial, even like the younger millennials will see a change now because they're directly impacted by what's happening now. So it's a total different ballgame. So I think speaking to the young people now is going to be a different conversation about what's happening about voting, if we need to be active, what we should do going forward, because they're directly impacted, especially those people who graduated from HBCUs. Now you can see what's happened during the coronavirus, where a lot of Black businesses, including HBCUs, are suffering now because they don't have the income. This directly impacts that generation. So they can see the effects of being involved in public policy physically and mentally, because there's some tangible benefit or something that's happening directly to them that makes them want to be a part of what's happening now. So I think in this election, we're going to see an increase of younger voters happening in this country now, because people want change. You can't just protest and then not take that protest to the ballot, because that's where the change happened. So I think we're going to see a difference.
Yeah. I'm keeping hope alive. I'm glad that you were with us, Erica, to kind of, give, because Louis was about to go there, and at least knowing that, because he has talked to somebody who talks with his peers who are not quite on the same page, or not quite in the same choir, singing from the same choir that you're in. And so we realize we all have work to do. So with that, we're going to close because we're over time, but I want to thank you, Louis, for supporting this program, for supporting our special issue. And as you know, we'll be having you back because we're dedicating the whole month to voting, because we want to do our part to get everybody, like my daddy used to say, lottie-dottie, and everybody to the polls on November 3rd. All right?
Or before.
Or before. That's right. Thanks so much.
Thank
all
you.
right. You all have a great day. And at this point, we're going to sign off here with Win TV. But don't go away, because WI Bridge TV is coming right behind us. So until we see you next week, have a wonderful week. Be safe and vote.
Hi there, everyone. This is Marcus K. Dowling. I'm a contributor with the Washington Informer Bridge, and this is a special episode of We Bridge TV. We're in the midst currently of, actually, we're starting the State of the Black Millennial Month. We're having conversations all this month regarding it's a partnership with Verizon, and we're having conversations regarding community thought leaders discussing racial equity in the District of Columbia across economics, employment, education, health, housing, criminal justice, and civic participation. Today's conversation is especially dealing with civic participation. Charles Gussom Jr. is the co-founder of We Fit DC. He's the assistant director of community development at Martha's Table, and he's the vice president of community connoisseurs. He's a multi-hyphenate, and he is very involved in the progression of community development issues in the nation's capital. So I'd like to pull him in. Lafayette, if you can make that happen. Charles, what's going on, man?
Hey, Marcus, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. So I gave your introduction. I'm happy to have you here. And if you can explain to me out of the gate, what made you want to be so involved in your community as a young African-American person?
Well, that's a great question, Marcus. And again, thank you, WeBridge, for having me. Thank you, Marcus, for hosting me. Thank you, Lafayette, for the invite. And this is Denise Barnes for having me as well, and the whole WeBridge and Washington Informer team. So part of what made me want to get more active in my community and do the work that I'm currently doing is being at one point in my life being a product of my environment and enduring some of the trials and tribulations that growing up in a poverty-stricken community, pertains. So that was part of what, motivated me. I was able to do a lot of great things in my community, connect with a lot of great individuals. I have phenomenal mentors, and just understanding some of the struggles that you deal with when you're growing up in these communities, and wanting to be a subject of change, wanting to be someone that can support my community, influence individuals, allowing them to know that there is another way, even if you grow up in certain environments, and just be a source of hope and inspiration.
Right. So I wanted to ask you about the need for essential services. So you deal in things like community health and fitness and community services with Martha's Table, and just being able to make sure that your community is properly taken care of. Thoughts about how you came to that, because that's something that most people say is the best way to do it, but it takes some time usually to get to that point. So how did you get it just straight out of the gate?
Yeah, I mean, with me, my story is a little organic. Again, growing up in the environments, you're a part of some of the you're directly impacted by some of the issues that are in your community. Observing friends, family that are dealing with some of the disparities that are in our wards, particularly Ward 8. I was raised in Ward 8, and
I'm a Ward 7 guy myself, so I understand.
So you understand. So, it was directly personal to me, and it was just a decision that I made, it was no blueprint. It was just identifying a problem and identifying within myself that I can be a part of the solution. I'm very solution oriented. I'm not the type that sit back and watch a problem and become dependent on something or any system to be created to support me. So I felt as though I was one of the better corporates to do some of the work that I'm doing in my community. And it's also just having a team of like-minded individuals. Like you mentioned, I have a nonprofit, Community Connoisseurs, where I have a great team of individuals who come from similar upbringings that I've come from, native Washingtonians. Also with We Fit DC, a lot of Washingtonians that are a part of that movement as well. And then at Martha's Table, I have a phenomenal team of great individuals who have the passion, the love for the community, and the drive to implement the work that we're doing.
Right. So yeah, definitely. So as far as being able to take something that you have as a passion project and turn it into a professional avocation, thoughts about that? Because that's kind of the dream scenario. I love to write. I'm a professional writer. So as far as being able to do that, I think that's the ideal. How are you able to achieve that? And was that something that was always the plan?
Yeah, again, it was an evolving plan. I always wanted to help. I knew that I've always wanted to. I've always been a person that wanted to support and help others. So once I was old enough to realize some of the things that were happening and directly impacting my community, and understanding some of the systematic things that were in place that were causing some of these issues, the lack of resources, and things of that nature, I just made a decision. I just said, we have to do something about this. And the best way that we can do something about some of the problems that are inside of our community is organizing. So it was just a matter of getting together with, like I mentioned before, like-minded individuals who have the same passions that I have for the community, and creating businesses, creating nonprofit organizations, creating platforms where we can inspire, where we can educate, and we can make sure that we're creating a pipeline towards sustainability in our community. So it's just started with a decision. There was no formal blueprint or anything. It was just a matter of me making up my mind that I wanted to do something that I had in my core, along with great partners, along with great friends that helped along the journey, and just doing it. I feel like a lot of times people have ideas that they want to do to help their current situations or their current communities or the communities that they grew up in, or if they didn't have to necessarily grow up in the community. They just see a problem that they don't agree with, or they see a need that needs to be met within any environment. I feel like it's just a matter of stepping, taking that leap of faith, connecting with like-minded individuals, and doing what you have to do to place your imprint on the work that you want to do.
Right. So I'm a believer in the notion that because of the coronavirus situation, that more people need to have this idea of having that bootstrapped mentality of like, okay, the government's not necessarily going to do something for us, and maybe like the community leaders that are existing are going to do something for us. Yeah. So let's do something ourselves. Your thoughts about that, and do you expect that to be something that's going to aid your development in the next 6 to 18 months?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're all we got. I mean, I feel like we've been rocked to sleep for years as a community, and it's time for us to, like you mentioned, strap up our boots and get busy. It's a lot of things that's going on I feel like the pandemic has made very relevant to people. In fact, I think during this pandemic, I think people are more enlightened on things and systems, more so than they ever have been, because it gave people the time to sit back and observe. So I think it's inspiring people to want to do more, even more than ever. So if you have that thought in your mind that you want to get acclimated with an organization, or you want to create your own movement or organization, I think the time is now to do it. And it's not hard to do. It's just a matter of doing your research, connecting with individuals or like-minded individuals or organizations that suit your vision, and get busy. Again, the time is now to really get active and really to start organizing within our communities. And if you see a problem, be a part of the solution. Every day, we're blessed with another day to inspire, to create, to motivate, to plan and organize. So I think the time is now to use the gifts that you were blessed with, that you still have the capabilities to use, if you're in a position where you are able to use them, to start doing what you ideally want to do within your community. So let's just get busy.
Right. So as somebody who works in 3 different, organizations, what would you consider to be some of the things that people can do directly? Because it's one thing to say, get out and be active. Yeah. But I want to make this a direct appeal so that we get people to actually do a thing that, will actually change somebody's life. Thoughts about what are the exact areas that would be best served by having people directly engaging in action right now?
I mean, it's a lot of different. It's a variety of areas.
2 or 3, man. Let's keep it narrow.
Yeah, it's a variety of areas. We're still dealing with extreme poverty. With everything that's going on with society in general. In regards to the activities that are going on with in regards to just the protesting and things that are going on. It's a lack of mentorship in our communities and underserved communities. I feel like that's an area that is lacking.
Yeah. Are you a mentor?
Yes, I am.
How many kids are you mentoring right now?
I'm mentoring 3 individuals.
Phenomenal. That's all I
One
can
youth
hear.
and 2 older adults. But the lack of mentorship in our communities. I mean, a lot of people who have credentials and have experiences and have knowledge in certain areas that can be an inspiration or be of service to a youth that may need that guidance, that may need that extra push. Definitely mentorship is a huge area to focus on, and just health and wellness. You know what I mean? Just understanding we're going through a pandemic where, in my area in particular, we had the most deaths. So
Yes,
just giving individuals the resources, providing the resources and the understanding on not only, the importance of it, but educating people on how to implement it in their lives. And that's a lot of what we do with, We Fit DC, with Community Connoisseurs, and with Martha's Table. We're not only focused on the health and wellness aspect of things, we're also the distribution part, the lack of access parts, where you can come and you can receive fruits and vegetables, or you can come and receive workouts, or you can come and receive dialogues on specific things. We're focused on the education piece because we want to make sure that the people that are in our communities right now can stay in our communities and sustain themselves and their families. So those are some of the areas I think that people can definitely lean in. And of course, social justice is huge in these times. So,
right. So I guess for my final question, I want to ask you, what is the greatest personal benefit to leading a life of community service?
I mean, it's just it's a selfless endeavor. You know what I mean? It's being able to sacrifice yourself for the better good of humanity is huge. I personally think that's what fuels me. The gifts are abundant, just from being able to, be of service to others. I think that, manifests so many other things in your life, from a divine space and a divine place. So when you're sacrificing a little bit of yourself for others, just the gifts are abundant, the internal gifts, the vision, the clarity that comes with doing the type of work that you do, and just also the connectiveness, being able to have an understanding of individual situations, having those conversations and learning more about what's going on in your community in a authentic and secure manner, building trust with individuals in your community, building trust with different, organizations and people doing work in the field of work that you're doing as well, and connecting the dots on ways that you can work and impact your community collectively. So it's a lot of different ways, a lot of different great things that comes with serving your community. And I'm just honored and grateful to be able to be in a position to be doing some of the work.
Right. So I want to, give you some space to be able to do the run of all the social media spaces where people can find out information for you, and they can get in touch, and they can be of assistance to what you're trying to achieve.
Absolutely. So my personal Instagram is at Charlie Gussum Jr. on Instagram, Charles Gussum Jr. on Facebook. Also follow at Martha's Table. Also follow at We Fit DC. Also follow at community_connoisseurs. And we have a lot of great things coming up. We actually at Martha's Table have on October the 17th, we have a pop-up clothing pop-up that is going to be organized by our Martha's Outfitters location, October the 17th at 2:00. Please come by and shop at no cost for a lot of great varieties of clothes. We're going to have a workout with We Fit DC incorporated with that. Also, Community Connoisseurs has a food distribution going on in the Woodland Terrace community on October the 24th. And this Saturday, free workouts at 920 11th Street Southeast from 10 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. And then we're right back at it with a free no-cost workout at 3921 South Capitol Street, Southeast as well. So we got a lot going on. Follow those platforms, and you'll see all of the updates of upcoming events and things that we have going on in our community.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time. And, I'll let you get back to work because you got a lot going on.
Absolutely.
So, and I love all the photos behind you. I want to give you a shout out on that. That's amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
So, I appreciate your time. No problem, man. Definitely.
All right. Have a great.
Absolutely. So thanks everybody for tuning in to WeBridge TV today. This is again the first of conversations you'll be hearing all month long about the state of the Black millennial. We had a conversation today in regards to civic participation. There will be numerous other conversations on other topics. So thank you so much for your time. Again, this has been Marcus K. Dowling for WeBridge TV.